continuing our why we do things differently than a lot of people. Why only a cappella music in the Church of Christ? That seems so very strange today. In fact, that's the first thing that anybody will notice if they ever come to any of our services. I just don't get it. Well, we're going to read some verses, and then we're going to try to understand. But I want to start off to say, if we were meeting in the 1700s, it would not be unusual. It wasn't until the 1820s through 60s that any Christian group, except for the Catholic Church, had instrumental music. But let's turn to the book of Acts. And we do 1625. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. Turn now to Romans, the 15th chapter, and verse 9. In order that the Gentiles might glorify God for his mercy, as it is written, therefore I will praise you among the Gentiles and sing to his name. Turn to 1 Corinthians 14:15. 1 Corinthians, when you get there, go to the 14th chapter. When you found that, go to the 15th verse. What am I to do? I will pray with my spirit, but I will pray with my mind also. I will sing praise with my spirit, but I will sing with my mind also. We'll turn to, I have several more, but for brevity, do you see something in there? You keep hearing the word sing, and you never hear the word play. Now, most people don't pay any attention, but a cappella music has become very popular now. A couple of years ago, there was even a show for a cappella singers, and they sang all kinds of music. But a lot of people do not realize what the word a cappella means. They think it means without instrument. And it does by practice. But the actual words are a cappella in the chapel. The very word we use to describe it says that's for the church. In the church. The chapel was the building. And so they used that thing because that's the kind of music that they had when they worshiped. Now, secular history is not infallible, but it does give us some pretty good insights into church music. The Latin a cappella tells us that it was church music without instruments. But the first time that an instrument was introduced that we have a record of was in 600 AD. That's over 500 years the church had been established, and it didn't stay that long. And it wasn't until 1000 AD that it became common in the Catholic Church. That's a long time. You would have thought if in this long history, somebody, somewhere, if it was allowable, would have done it. We know that in the Old Testament, there was instrumental music in the temple. We know that. Well, surely, if it was allowable, somebody would have put it in to the church. But it didn't come in, even start, until over 500 years the church had been there. That's a very powerful, powerful voice. In fact, the Eastern Orthodox Church did not allow instruments. That's one of the reasons that they split from the Catholic Church. They did not allow them until today. Any place else in the world, the Eastern Orthodox Church will not have an organ or any instrumental music. But if you go to one here, you'll find it. The Patriarch of Constantinople, the head of that church, said, we will allow instrumental music because of the extreme sinfulness of the American people. He said, it's not right, but the only way we can get them in the door is to have music, instrumental music. That's basically what he was saying, is that the love of God was not in the American people enough without the instrument. We talked about the instruments being allowed in the temple, and we know that they were in private. We know those things. But we also know that in the first century, there were no instruments of music allowed in the synagogues. You could go to the temple and you would have instruments of music. But when you went to your local synagogue on the Sabbath, they were not allowed. That leads me to believe that the impression was that instruments were for private and temple worship only. Even before the church, there was a distinction made. Once you turn to Ephesians, the 5th chapter, and verse 19. Addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with all your heart. This verse is probably the most important verse in explaining exactly why we do not use instrumental music. The word psalms, and most of the psalms, as they were written, they had musical instruments to play them in the temple and at home, but not in the synagogue. So a psalm could be sung without instrumental music, but the word psalm comes from the word psallo, P-S-A-L-L-O. And that meant to plick, to strum, to twang the carpenter's line. I know there's some carpenters here, and that's really cool when you stretch out that chalk line and you go boing, and it makes a line on there. You could pluck your hair, or you could pluck the sounds of the lyre, harp. But the phrase here in English says making melody. That's that weird word solo. So there's plucking involved. Some people say, well, since solo says to pluck, you can play an instrument. And I agree. But the verse, if you want to do, literally goes addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and plucking the strings of your heart to the Lord. Now, we've already talked several times about general and specific and having the authority to do something. And the one thing that we understand is when we're told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, when we're told specifically, there is nothing else allowed. And I will tell you that all the other arguments, and there are many, we could spend days talking about them, but the fact is, this one is the most definitive, because the people who heard it first heard it to say that there was an instrument that was to be played with singing, and it was the harp. Remember in the other verse it says, I will sing, and my mind also sing with the harp. The instrument that God wants to hear is here. He wants to hear that. That's the melody. And when you put anything else in, it messes it up. In English, the melody is in our hearts. Well, those who know music know that there's two main parts of music. There's the melody and the harmony. Well, if this is the melody, then this is the harmony, and there's no place else for anything else. The melody, the lead guitar, is the heart. I think that this is something that maybe we don't stress enough. Now, you remember I told you that the temple had instrumental music, and they had instrumental music in private. Our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. You're allowed musical instruments in the temple. The heart. The heart is everything. Now some people say, well, it's just an aid to singing. No, a pitch pipe is an aid. And I don't know, those of us that are second, third, fourth, 23rd generation members of the church have very little experience with congregational singing with a musical instrument. Debbie and I worshiped at a Christian church with her mom. And they are very close in practice to us. They baptize for the remission of sins. But they have a piano or an organ. Now, I want you to know something. We do our best on Sunday night to sing. But sometimes, it's a little ragged. Especially when Grant's not here. It's a little ragged. But I would put those 10 to 13 people here against that 80 to 90 people congregation any day. I picked up their songbook, and I'm looking at it, and it's exactly the same as ours. It's got 4-part harmony. It's beautiful. And we sang some songs like we did today, where you have bass parts. This congregation, nobody could sing the bass. The piano did everything. And everybody else just sort of went along. Except the preacher. He whistled. So, you know, the only way that an instrument helps you sing is if you want it to hide your singing. It doesn't help the singing. It may help the melody, but that's what happens, is the melody is the organ, and the voice is still the harmony. Turn to Colossians 3:16 and we'll continue with some of these. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Instrumental music can stir emotions, but it can't teach or admonish. It can't admonish you, and it can't teach you. Turn to Hebrews 2:12. That's it. Saying, I will tell you of your name to my brothers. In the midst of the congregation, I will sing your praise. You hear sing over and over again. You never hear play. The very word acappella meant in the church building. Because for centuries, that's the way it was done from the beginning, and it didn't change. But I do have a word of admonishment for those of us who sing a cappella. If you're out there and you're mouthing words, it's not right. You have to sing with the heart. You can throw every instrument out of every church building, but unless the people are singing from here, it is not right. So be careful. We sang a song I love. Would you be poured out like wine upon the altar for me? If it didn't come from here, it's not the singing that God desires. If you didn't truly say, I want to be poured out like the altar, on the altar. So don't think I'm just talking bad about denominations. If we don't use the heart, pluck the heartstrings, if the music doesn't start here before it comes out here, it's just as wrong. God has commanded that we sing and make the melody in our hearts. Most of us would never say amen to a prayer if we didn't believe it. In the same way, we should never sing a song of worship if we don't mean it, every word. If anybody needs to answer the invitation in a public way, you can come now as we stand and as we sing.